there was a lion tracker who was featured in the book. And he said when he starts out to track a lion, he has no idea where he's going, but he knows exactly how to get there. That means he knows the procedure to follow the lion. He's not going to go where he thinks the lion should be, right? He's going to follow it. And again, as with tracking, he may lose the trail. And if he knows what he's doing, he'll realize quickly he lost the trail and go back and pick up the trail. And so I think that's what I would say to any practitioner. If you reframe what it means to be competent, is to be able to interact with the body and feel or see or hear what's really there, and then treat that appropriately, versus being able to, in your head, throw some different things together and it makes like a cool story. I think that's the difference.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. Acupuncture, it's not linear. It's discovered fresh with each patient encounter. It's the opposite of paint by numbers. You could flowchart it, but then you'd be locked into what's already been discovered. Acupuncture will ask you to change your mind on a regular basis. It asks us to get comfortable with being wrong on the way to being right. Acupuncture is strange stuff. You can science it up all you like, squeeze it into whatever cognitive boxes of intellect and sense that you find suitable to consensus reality, but acupuncture is going to Houdini its way out of those constraints. There are people who will offer you the secrets of the ages through a lineage study. There are groups who will teach you how to make more money in a month than you used to make in 6. And you can find research that will allow you to glimpse into the biomechanics of what particular acupuncture points do to the physiology of test subjects. But I think that the secret to acupuncture, it's this. You have to make it fun. Don't be too serious. Our profession can be so grimly serious. But acupuncture will never show you its secrets if you can't make it laugh. Humans are absurd. The medicine, it's weird and zany. Alongside your Nanjing, have a copy of Another Roadside Attraction, the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, or the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. While you're studying the process and progress of pathology, don't forget to read some Rumi. Notice what the afternoon sunlight does to the color of the leaves on the tree that's outside your window, and laugh with your patients about the things that they find funny. In the process of understanding what is going on with the people who come to see you, remember to enjoy the process of discovery. Savor the feeling of not knowing the contours of their problem as you allow yourself into an openness that has you finding things that you weren't looking for. Your knowledge will change as your skill increases. Surrender the ideas that your teachers told you that gave you a sense of stability in the beginning as you uncover situations where their counsel no longer holds true. Leave yourself enough space in the diagnosis you're weaving for the patient to tell you exactly what they need in a way that catches you off guard. Because your patients have a story of who they are, and ridiculous as it often sounds, you have to take them seriously if you want to understand them. Sometimes I think the trick is that you have to hold everything loosely. Loose enough that you can allow the contradictions in a patient's presentation to gel into a coherent sense of how they're melded together. The world of conventional medicine trades on certainty, but acupuncture, it's more slippery than that. Like a child that asks why, the practice of acupuncture will annoy you into recognizing your misconceptions, biases, and beliefs, all of which, like it or not, find their way into the treatment room. You don't have to be whole and healed to help others. For sure, It's useful if you're not projecting your shadowy, unresolved grievances of the world onto them, but at the same time, bringing your unique wobble into the treatment room. It gives your patients the permission to tell you about how they're dealing with the loss of their cognitive function in a way that might make both of you laugh, and they will tell you about their loneliness in their marriage in a way that gives you a glimpse into the giddy attraction that they once had in their youth. Often, you'll hear confessions along the lines of, "I've lived a certain way and I'm fine with myself, even if others tell me that I shouldn't." I frequently hear colleagues say that our work is to reduce suffering. It's a lovely Buddhist ideal, but I'm not sure that is what my work is these days. I suspect it has more to do with not attempting to avoid the troubles at hand, to allow room for the suffering, to be on more friendly terms with its texture and travail, give permission and the space to allow our patients into a wider sense of who they are. Accompany them as they discover they're different than they believe themselves to be, that there is room for finding what they hadn't been looking for. One of the things I love about practicing acupuncture is that it's a constant voyage of discovery. People with the same Western diagnosis can have very different East Asian medicine presentations, and the same East Asian medicine diagnosis can manifest as different Western medicine problems. The maps and the models that we use to navigate, they are in constant need of updating. How to be attentive in such a way so as to attend to what would be most useful for our patients? I suspect this is the core of our work. In this conversation with Dan Bensky, we discuss some of the models and perspectives from his new book, Engaging Vitality. We'll touch in on what it means to know what you're doing, the space in between sensing and thinking, the meaning of Tong, and how to be attentive and appreciative in a way that allows you to find what you weren't looking for. Dan has been exploring the methods he shares in Engaging Vitality for more than 30 years. In the next hour or so, you'll have the opportunity to engage some mindsets and perspectives that will help you to get more friendly with those moments in clinic when your ideas of what you thought is going on are disrupted with the thought of, that's odd. We'll get into it right after a few words from the folks that make it possible for you to enjoy Qiological. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. You have clinic challenges? Our sponsors have solutions. Mayway focuses this month on digestive health. Visit them not just for herbs, but also for learning resources that help you to better use real Chinese medicine. It's hip to be square with the game-changing Fascia Buddy cupping system that your patients are going to love. One of the foundations of a smooth-running clinic is having a supplier that you can rely on. Blue Poppy is your trusted source for all your clinic supply needs. Listen in for their special Black Friday discount. Later in the show, you'll hear how Jane's suite of clinic management tools makes office management a breeze. And for those of you licensed in California who want to get on insurance rolls with the best reimbursements and the least hassles, we have a special message from AccuCare, who has been helping acupuncturists do exactly that for over 30 years. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers that our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lau, president of Mayway Herbs. This month at Mayway, we're focused on digestive health, a core foundation of wellness in Chinese medicine. In our newsletter and on our Chinese Medicine Matters podcast, we'll explore formulas and treatment for constipation, IBS, and food stagnation, offering both classical TCM insights and practical clinical applications. Since 1969, Mayway Herbs has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. Our Plumflower brand line includes pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs. And with educational resources, articles, and videos, we're here to help you provide the very best patient care. Visit us at Mayway.com to explore more. We wish you a wonderful holiday season, and deep thanks, as always, for your support. Here's to better health and balance with the wisdom of real Chinese medicine.
The square cupping revolution has begun. Hi again, John Stan here, developer of the multi-sized Fascia Buddy square cupping system. We've been demonstrating the square cup system at conferences across North America and Europe, meeting wide-eyed practitioners excited by what the square cups can do. Our short, on-the-spot treatments have produced quick fascial remodeling, resulting in increased range of motion, less pain, and better function. Circular cups will always have a place, but the new techniques made possible with Fascia Buddy square cups will expand what you can accomplish, helping you love cupping even more. Fascia Buddy products are now available in the US through Golden Needle, Blue Poppy, and Omni Therapy Supply, in Canada at Eastern Currents, in the EU at acupunctureworld.com, and in New Zealand at Kinetic Distributions. Visit fasciabuddy.com to see links to our distributors and get your set today.
Running a busy clinic means staying stocked with the products you trust. And this November, Blue Poppy is making it easier than ever. From November 17th through the 30th, take 20% off your favorite Blue Poppy products during their Black Friday sale. That includes everything from their premium acupuncture needle brands, Tempo and Balance, to trusted herbal formulas like the Classics line, Great Nature Classics Cold Quell, Pediatrics Externals, and many more. It's the perfect time to stock up before the year ends, and with free shipping on all orders over $50 in the continental United States, there's even more to love. Don't miss this limited offer, 20% off Blue Poppy products, November 17th through the 30th. Dan Bensky, welcome back to Geological.
Thanks very much for having me again. I appreciate it.
Well, it's always great hanging out with you, jibber-jabbering about medicine and things. We've been doing this for a couple of years now.
More than once.
Yeah, more than once. Yeah, we've got a couple of episodes, and if I was a better podcast host, I would have had all those written down to tell people. But instead, I'll just say this. We've got a new website that we just launched. It's kind of like a library. It's got a great search feature. So you can just pop over to the website and catch anything we've had to talk about with Dan in the past, and it'll pop right up for you. It's kind of cool.
You also had one with Chip, right? Didn't you have at least one with Chip?
I did have one with Chip.
Right. That's
way back in the early days. In fact, I think I remember it was number 25.
Yeah, so that would be something that people should listen to also if they're interested in this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's that. So, first of all, gongshi, gongshi, gongshi. Mazel tov. Congratulations. You've got a new book.
Yep.
Engaging Vitality.
Right.
Been working on it for, I don't know, how long now?
About 8 years. Yeah, we started just not too long before Chip got sick. So, and someone told me, oh, this is maybe the first book you've done, Dan, that you can't use as a test for insomnia. And I said, you might be right. It's true. When I did, the first thing I wrote, I think ever got published, was the Introduction to Chinese Medicine for the Acupuncture Comprehensive Textbook that came out in 81. And in 83, I started practicing in Cambridge, Mass. And I had a bunch of insomnia patients. And I would tell them that after the first treatment, it's very important that you understand what I'm doing. So I'd lend them a copy of the book and tell them before you go to sleep every night, I want you to read this introductory chapter. But the reason I did it is that the vast majority of them would come back the next week and say, Dan, sorry, I couldn't get through it. I just kept falling asleep. So I said, okay, those people's insomnia is not serious. And the people who came back and were talking to me about the details of what I had written, I knew they had very serious insomnia. So I had to bring out the big guns. Yeah.
That's funny.
It's true. I was really used. I thought this book is good for something. So,
well, now we've talked about that book. We're not going to get into it too much here. Again, that we covered that in another conversation. I think over on the history series.
Could be, right? Yeah.
one of the first history series books, or conversations rather.
We had one with John O'Connor too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was way in the beginning.
Yeah.
That was like in single digits, like 3 or 4. Like you guys were one of the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, geological conversations we had. Man, it's been a while.
Yeah. So this book is very different. This is not a translation. This is a kind of a distillation and perhaps hopefully a relatively clear presentation of what we've been up to, or what Chip and I and Margaret Dinkins is also an important part, developed as a way of teaching people one way of using palpation and maybe some other also kind of cognitive tools from osteopathy to augment, improve, change the way they deal with East Asian medicine. And that's what engaging vitality is all about. So,
yeah. Well, there's another aspect to it that really has my attention. I sat in on your class. You did a little class, or I don't know if it was a class. It was more like a
Q&A.
Just a discussion about the book, right? Q&A, yeah. And there's some more coming up. We can put information on the show notes page. But one of the things that really struck me is that there's also a kind of a mindset. There's an approach. There's a I think I would even say a stance that the practitioner takes in relation to the patient, the work, and themselves, and their own thinking, and their own being, and their own sensing. There was something that you guys said in that about, I think it was you who said it, something about, like you know you're really doing acupuncture well when you find something that you weren't looking for during a treatment. That it's not about knowing, although there's plenty to know, but there's also this aspect of being capable of noticing what you weren't looking for and using that information. I'd like to start with that.
Okay. I think that's a really, maybe as you figured out, that's probably the key thing. Because otherwise, I think one of the problems people do, any kind of medicine actually, but I think part of the background, Michael, is that I see acupuncture in particular as a call and response form of therapy, meaning that what we do, what the practitioner does is the call, but the actual treatment is the response. And if you're paying attention to the response, then you have to see what's really happening, not what you think is happening. And if you make the right call, you'll get a good response, but you can make the call that makes sense to you, and the body either doesn't respond or responds in a negative way, then you need to know that, okay, well, what I was doing was not very useful. And I think this idea that I think Chip used to use this like a dance, that you're kind of interacting with the person, just like if you're going to dance with someone, I guess you could do a dance where everything is in lockstep, but that's not very lively, and that's probably not the way people would naturally dance. And if you want to do a dance with someone, you need to respond to them, and whatever. I think it's something like that. And this idea that you have to pay attention to what's happening and pay attention with the mindset that you are checking yourself. You're not trying to confirm what you thought is extremely important. If you look for things, you will have a tendency to find them. And particularly if you're comfortable with a certain approach or style of East Asian medicine, you'll try to kind of put your patients in that box. And lots of times it'll work, but sometimes it won't. And so it's pretty helpful to just have the attitude that you're checking yourself, and then you're open. And oftentimes you'll find like, this is a completely different issue than I thought it was, or that I wanted to do this in an extraordinary vessel perspective. That's what I'm into today. But actually, when I look at this person and do the different kinds of feedback and different kinds of examinations on them, it's clear that this is just a Zangfu type problem. So I think those things, and so it's always, to me, it's really refreshing And it's a positive feeling like, oh, I had a sense in my head that it was A. And when I engage the person, it's like, oh, no, that's not really it. It's some, and that's one of the great things about East Asian medicine, that it has all these different styles and different approaches. And so you can have one that's your default. I think most people do. I think that's a good thing. But you have to be willing to be open that, oh, maybe in this person at this time, your default way of understanding and what's going on with them and how to improve their health is not really appropriate. And so you have another choice, and then you can do that and check it out.
As long as you have some other tools.
Yeah, you have to have a lot of tools, right?
You need to have tools. I remember something that Chip said, a little bit like, I think, was it Richard Feynman also said, but Chip used to say something about like taking the ideas that you think are really right and you like and trying to disprove them.
Exactly.
Like disprove your hypothesis, disprove your diagnosis, which on one hand, I hear that and it's like, oh yeah, that's right. But in the moment of clinic, when I'm trying to be helpful, in the moment of clinic, when I want to feel like I'm capable and competent and I know what I'm doing, trying to prove or trying to disprove what I think I'm experiencing in front of me, it can be very unnerving. And I think one of the problems that many of us face, especially early on, is a lack of confidence in what we're doing and how we're working. And for good reason, because we don't have a big database, a big storehouse of experience, knowledge, and being in clinic. But at the same time, that knowledge base can blind us. So it's this really tricky thing, Dan,
Yeah.
of like standing on one foot and then standing on the other.
Well, I think part of it might be, Michael, to reframe what it means to know what you're doing.
Mm.
And so maybe to me, knowing what you're doing is being open and checking yourself on even very simple things. So again, there's one technique that we do is, oh, you want to find a point location. Okay. So knowing what you're doing isn't knowing the details of the point this location in some book or the point location that some teacher taught you. Knowing what you're doing is finding the point that gives you the response that you're looking for. And if you can know that, oh, the location that the book says, I don't get that response, but if I do we have tools, other people have tools, I use those tools, and then I get the response I want, even though maybe the point is up to a half a centimeter away from where you thought it was or where you were taught it was. That's knowing what you're doing. And I think the same thing with, with the being open to the diagnosis. Again, we often use this. I'm blanking on his name. I can't pronounce it easily, but there was a lion tracker who was featured in the book, and he said that he has no idea when he starts out to track a lion, he has no idea where he's going, but he knows exactly how to get there. That means he knows the procedure to follow the lion. He's not going to go where he thinks the lion should be, right? He's going to follow it. And again, as with tracking, he may lose the trail. And if he knows what he's doing, he'll realize quickly he lost the trail and go back and pick up the trail. And so I think that's what I would say to any practitioner. If you reframe what it means to be competent is to be able to interact with the body and feel or see or hear what's really there and then treat that appropriately versus being able to in your head throw some different things together and it makes like a cool story. I think that's the difference. And again, I don't think if you're starting this business, I remember myself very clearly. I wasn't competent in the beginning, but I began to. You can have your teacher, your main teachers have to be your patients, and if you're not paying attention to them, you're not going to learn from them, and you won't get better. And if you just say, "Oh, I do this thing, and I have this amazing result," and then the other 90% of the time I have no result, that's not really getting better. And so I think however you do it, I mean, again, I have my own approach, of course, but everybody should have, every individual practitioner has to develop their own approach that if you reframe, oh, I know what I'm doing because I'm paying attention. And I know what I'm doing because I'm able to not hold on so tightly to a particular viewpoint that I can't see what's there. And I would say that holding on to a viewpoint very tightly and not seeing what's there is not only a problem in doing East Asian medicine. So I think that's something that we can all need to work on in many facets of our lives.
I would not disagree with you on that. It's hard to see it for ourselves in our own lives. It's so much easier to look outside and see that. It's just obvious when you look from the outside, but to be able to turn it back on yourself in a way with a bit of stick-to-itiveness and a bit of compassion. Like, oh yeah, I missed that.
Right.
Oh, now I see it.
So I think that's another way in which your patients can be your teachers, because they will show you that, no, that's not you. You like that. You like doing that. You like that approach. That's not what's going on with me. That's not the best way, or that's not a useful way of understanding my problem and how to get my problem less, or how to improve my health today. And again, if you pay attention to feedback, then you don't have to wait a week or two to find. You can see right away, oh yeah, no, I wanted to do that. That's point which is the magic point for X symptom. It's not doing it today. It's I can tell.
Yeah. I want to talk to you more about the tools in a moment. I want to stick with the mindset piece for a bit. I think in part because it's something, I wouldn't say I struggle with it at this point, but it's never not present in my clinic.
Yeah, to me, Michael, the mindset is probably the more important part, because if you have this kind of mindset, you can use other tools. Our tools are just ours. There's lots of tools, and we've had a few. I think people who came to study EV as already fairly experienced and established practitioners who ended up telling me they had taking the classes was extremely useful to them, even though they didn't really do very much or any of the techniques. That getting this idea that, given the techniques they already had, to approach them in a different way made a big improvement in the way they treated patients. And so I think I agree with you. I think that, I like the techniques for lots of reasons. And again, originally, Michael, I did it backwards. I thought I just teach the people techniques and they could do whatever they wanted. And it took me a decade, maybe even longer, to realize, oh no, that doesn't work. If they don't have the idea that this is an ongoing process, that you have to pay attention, that you have to kind of give up, you have to change the idea of knowing what you're doing to knowing how to respond versus knowing what you know, like knowing your existing database, then the techniques are useless when they don't know how to use them. And that was what people used to ask me all the time. Well, what do you do with this? And I said, like, what do you do with pulse diagnosis? What do you do with tongue diagnosis? But those things people have learned kind of algorithms. Oh, if the tongue is like this, then then they can have this diagnosis. And that diagnosis, I can use these points. And I think in the engaging vitality mindset, every single step along the way is open to interpretation, to feedback, to change. I'll give a common example, and I hope it's not out of line, but like there's lots like SOM and meridian therapy and some kinds of Chinese styles. They do their point location, or they do the point they decide to pick based on some understanding of how the body works. They use well points for this, they use the earth point for that, all of which are extremely useful. And I think a fundamental part of our medicine, but sometimes they're not right. Sometimes, you want to do liver deficiency, and if you look for a response, however you define the response, even if you define this response in the context of meridian therapy, which would be a change in the pulse and maybe a change in the abdomen, you do kidney 10 and liver 8, doesn't work. And if you have different ways of finding the points, you often find different kidney points and different liver points that will give you the response that you wanted. And that may tell you something about, oh, maybe it's not really deficiency. Maybe there's some other thing. You can put that information into the mix in your head to try to understand what's going on with the patient better. But the core thing is, if you're paying attention to the feedback, to how the person responds, the, what's the word, conventional or the points don't give you that response. So it's not a philosophical or a theoretical discussion. It's that, oh, again, I'll keep it not using any EV stuff, just using meridian therapy stuff. Oh, the pulse doesn't change the way it's supposed to change. And sometimes it's because the point location's not right. You're putting it where you think it is, but it's not there, that particular point. And sometimes that's not the right point. And again, it's not the right point defined by, so we're talking about knowing what you're doing. It's not defined by your knowledge base of, oh, yes, in this case, they have this kind of problem, so I want to use this phasic point on this channel to do that. But no, I don't get the response. The body is not changing in the way that's helpful to the patient. Does that make sense?
Dan, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Look, one of the things I find, and I've always found delightful about practicing acupuncture, there's a whole intellectual framework that goes with it, and it's kind of fun. It's satisfying. It's a good puzzle. It holds together. You can make a good story, and sometimes that story is helpful. And as a practitioner, it's satisfying. Like, ooh, I kind of get this, and I see how that works, and you learn something from it, right? It adds to your knowledge base. It's useful, and just personally, it's satisfying. Like, it makes your day go good when you can help people, and you're working out puzzles, and you're understanding things better than you did hopefully last week. And yes, then there's those moments where, like, these things that usually work, now they're not. And more importantly, how do I know they're not? Is it something in the complexion? Is it the pulse? Just the way the room feels. Sometimes I put some needles in, and it's just like, this person is tightening up. I don't even have to touch them.
Right.
It's just like, oh, no, wrong. And I'll take the needles out. Patients are often a little disconcerted at first. Like, you just put that in, why are you taking it out? And certainly as a younger practitioner, I'd be like, oh my God, like, what are they going to think about me? And the truth is, again, well, I'm just paying attention. This was a great idea that's not right for you. And I'll tell my patients that. It's like, yeah, this was a good idea, but it's not right for you right now.
Yeah.
Right? Here's something I think will be better.
Yeah, I think one of I was very lucky in the mid 70s. I spent some time in Taiwan after finishing up in Macau, and I had a chance to work for a few months with this really amazing woman, Ling Ling Xian. English name was Regina Ling, the acupuncturist. And she didn't do any palpation of any kind that I remember. I didn't, maybe except for taking the pulse, I didn't do any palpation myself at that time. And one interesting thing about her is that she was apprentice trained by her grandmother starting when she was 3, before there was a Communist Party of China. And I had studied with people who come out of schools of Chinese medicine in communist China, before the Cultural Revolution. And the practice was the same. There was no, that's an interesting thing. But the reason I brought her up now is her goal for response was a very specific and strong de qi sensation, needle sensation. And she probably did, I'm guessing, 4 to 6 points bilaterally on almost all of her patients. And on any given patient, there would almost always be 1 or 2 points that she would needle multiple times. She put the needle in. She didn't get the response she wanted. She'd take it out, take another needle, put it in. And she was completely, this is not a big deal. Like, I want to get the response. I remember asking her, so patients don't care if you've needled them 12 times or 15 times. They care that they get better. And I noticed that I've studied, maybe unfortunately or maybe unavoidably, with lots of mediocre acupuncturists at that time. And they never, ever, ever put the needle in twice. Never. Because they were like, oh, the patient. I mean, I don't know. I didn't ask them why did you did it, but my impression was exactly. Well, the patient would say, why did you do that? You put it in the wrong place. And again, Dr. Ling would say, well, in the end, I put it in the right place.
Getting there.
That she was paying attention. So it's a completely different style and everything that I happen to do now. But she made in many other ways, she made a huge impression on me as a really impressive human being. But also this thing that if you want that sensation, then you do it till you get that sensation. That will give your patient the best chance of improving. And that's the point. Not to demonstrate to yourself that you know something about whatever, but that you're helping the patient. And so I think that's a really important thing. And again, what we were talking about earlier, Michael, I always restate the obvious. That's my main goal in life, is that is what it means to be good at acupuncture, to be able to pay attention and do the best thing for the patient that you can, not anything else, not to talk to yourself about how well you understand something or whatever. It's only helping the patient. And then I'm pretty sure that, I have my own view that anyone who says in East Asian there's only one way to do anything is delusional. They may be very good. They may be someone you can learn a lot from. They may give you things that will help you treat lots of patients effectively. But if they think their way is the only way on that particular point, they're just delusional. That's the great thing about East Asian medicine. There's always multiple ways.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR that's here to make clinical life a little easier. Running a health and wellness practice means managing a lot of moving parts. That's why I love how Jane helps to bring a bit of calm to the busy day by allowing me to set a schedule that works for my business. I can customize treatment types and times, locations, and staff availability to keep everybody organized and my clinic running smoothly. Need to send intake forms or appointment reminders? Jane can automate those too, helping patients to show up prepared and on time. And when it's time to pay, it's all taken care of. No extra card swipes or billing cleanup later. I especially like that with the welcome email my patients receive, they can fill out the intake, consent, and disclosure forms. It's easy for the patient, and it all goes right into their digital file. If you're looking for software that cares as much about the business side of your clinic as you care about your patients, head to jane.app/demo to learn more. And if you're ready to dive in, use the code Qiological for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. I would agree with you. It is one of the great things about it. I think it's also one of the things that makes it very difficult to learn and why it takes so much time to learn. I think about people who maybe go study accounting or something like that, right? And they get out of school and they're kind of good to go with getting into a career. Maybe make some pretty good money even, like right out of the gate. But with East Asian medicine, it's trickier. It's like there's a longer maturation period.
Yeah.
Between your schooling and your, I'm going to say, competency in clinic. It's not to say that people don't come out or that they don't come out incompetent. Maybe some do. I think people usually come out with a modicum of skill, but it's usually like a handful of magic beans right? It's not a complete thing yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know about the Dr. John Shun, the doctor from Shanghai who worked in New York for many, many years? He is a very
Yeah, he was like in the Woody Allen movie.
that's really, and he's actually the Shun Hammer
Hmm.
pulse diagnosis. He's the John Shun, and he said again, this is a very close paraphrase. Going studying Western medicine is really difficult. It's really hard to learn. It's the schooling and all that stuff. But once you learn it, it's relatively easy to practice. And East Chinese medicine to him is the opposite. You learn the basics. It's much easier to learn than what you would learn in Western medicine, but it's much harder to practice because of you have to what we've been talking about. You have to put it together. You have to do these things, and so I think he may be overgeneralizing it in both ways, but I thought that was an insightful thing, just a way of looking at it. That when you get done with your Western medical training, someone comes in with X problem, you know how to do the basic diagnosis, you know what tests to add, if the tests are this or that, the standard of care is this, you do that. And then, there's the issue of what you do when it doesn't work. That's another story.
Hmm. But it's mostly flow charted.
It's mostly flowcharts, mostly algorithms. And there's been an attempt to do that with Chinese medicine. My own opinion doesn't work that well, but I think his point was, yeah, no, you have to grapple with it. You have to, your main teachers are not your teachers in school. Your main teachers are your patients. And yeah, I think that's just the way it is.
I think it is too. I remember hearing that in school from people that I respected. I've found that to be true in my experience. Our patients are our teachers. Dan, it's damn humbling.
Yeah, well, I mean, what it should do to people, which I'm not sure it always does, is give you a very, I think, crucial attitude that never goes away. It should never go away. And that is one of modesty. That, however you look at it, we should be very modest about our abilities. I just talk about, I'm kind of a pedantic jerk myself, but even is like, I 50 years ago, I knew nothing about Chinese medicine. Now I know a lot. And I know that what I know is maybe a millionth of what there is to know. I mean those numbers are all made up, but it's a very tiny percentage of what there is to know.
Yeah, it's impossible to drink that ocean.
It's impossible. Like that's right. I know how to swim, and
Mm.
I know I can swim. Maybe if I'm a really good long distance swimmer, I can swim 20, 30 miles, but I can't swim from California to Hawaii, right? And it's so I think that's just to me that's obvious, and also our patient. Think about yourself. Everybody's so complicated and all these different things going on, and we don't really know why people do anything, right? And why the body does this or why that. We have some ideas that sometimes are helpful. We don't know. And so to think that, oh, if I don't think so to me, it's if I don't think I know everything and then I'm not a good practitioner. I think it's the other way around. I think that practitioners who think they know everything are terrible. And I have lots of experience seeing patients who've seen very, very popular, very, very big time, well known practitioners in China and in the West, who the practitioner is defined by one approach, and that approach totally screwed over this particular patient. And the one case, I won't do the names because the names aren't important, but the particular herbalist had this approach. Didn't not only didn't work for the patient, Michael, but it gave them all the side effects that you get when you use that approach inappropriately. And when the patient went back, the practitioner said, like, don't you know who I am? Like, this is what I do. And well, the person may have many great successes, but to me, he's a terrible doctor. And so I think that's something we have to make sure of ourselves. I have to think about this myself all the time that, I have my own way of doing things. I also have no problem treating someone for me, it would be 3 to 4 times. And if they didn't get better, I just tell them they should see someone else. Hopefully I could give them a referral with some, idea that, oh, I don't do this, or I can't do this. You should see someone who does that. But I was never embarrassed by that. Why would I think I could treat everything, every person? That's like,
Well, I mean, I think there is a progression, a growth curve, and especially in the beginning, like what I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to treat anything when you're first starting out, and then you get a little experience and you get some theory, and you start to see how things work, and it's like, oh my God, this stuff can treat anything. And then you find out what you actually can and can't treat, at least for you yourself.
right.
And again, and this is just me and my development. Sometimes the very knowledge that I have that's been helpful to other people, I will certainly bias that in the clinic because it's been helpful before. It's probably going to be helpful here. Again, I want to try to stay attentive enough to see, is that true? But it's very easy to lean on. And sometimes my knowledge, I feel like it blinds me. And I'm grateful for the patients who are like, hey, this isn't working out. Like, okay, well, let's start over. Like take an Etch a Sketch, turn it upside down, turn it over. What do we got here?
Yeah, but I want to also approach things from the opposite way. I have a couple things to say. I hope that makes sense. One is that when you are open, for me, my own personal experience anyway, there are points, for example, talking about points. One of our postulates is that if in East Asian medicine, there's fights about something, like, for example, a point location,
Mm.
that almost certainly means, well, sometimes it's in one location and sometimes it's the other. It's not that one is wrong and one is right, but that sometimes one works and sometimes the other. And from my perspective, and everybody has their own biases and stuff. I try to find the points that are there. The vast majority of the time, they're the points that other people would pick anyway. I mean, like, there's a reason when people tell you, oh, this is the important point for this, it's usually based on experience. It's not usually based on some kind of a mental games. And so, if you find where the points are in these different styles, like I was talking before, meridian therapy, kidney 10 and liver 8, well, that's by far the most common. When I have found that kind of thing, those are the most common points. I mean, so it's not that the knowledge is baseless, but it's that it's good to be able to check. And the other thing, I don't want to give people the impression, if they're relatively new, that they shouldn't just do the best they can and expect good things to happen. And the story for myself is, I won't go into all the details, but I worked with this really phenomenal osteopath off and on for maybe 10 years. He's certainly the most incredible healer I think I've ever encountered. And at one point, I remember that if I couldn't help someone, I would think, well, if I really cared about them, I'd buy them a ticket so they could go see this guy. And one day here in Seattle, I had someone brought a patient, maybe a 6 or 7 year old boy, who had lived where this guy had been when he was 2 or 3 and been treated by him and not particularly helped. And my first thought was like, what is wrong with you? Right? Like, why are you here? And then I realized, I think this is a really crucial turning point in my professional life. It doesn't matter. They're here. The boy is here in my office. All I can do is do my best. And if I happen to help him when the other person didn't help him, all it means is that I'm capable of helping people. It doesn't mean that I'm better in any way than this other person. It's that's the whether I'm better or worse than this other practitioner is just completely the wrong question. The only question is, what can I do for this boy today? In this particular case, I helped him quite a bit. I kept in touch with him for another 20 years. He was fine. But it wasn't like, oh, well, I'm much better than like, no, no, there's a chasm between my abilities and this other guy's abilities. It's not in the same, as we would say now, in the same ballpark. But it doesn't matter. Does that make sense, Michael?
Dan, it really does. I had a guest on recently, and we somehow got on to talk about optimum time for treatment. And he said, well, my teacher said the optimum time for treatment is when the patient is on your table.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very simple.
Yeah.
Like, well, they're here in front of you, so this is what it is. Batter up.
Yeah. And this is your opportunity to help the person. And again, I think always, again, maybe it's the modesty issue, maybe something else. And then always a chance to help people, but always a chance to learn something.
Mm.
You should be learning something from every encounter. If you're not, then you're not really paying attention. You know, I mean, that some people you may, and so on a certain level for me, when everything goes super smoothly, this is selfish on my part. I'm a slightly, oh, I didn't really have to stretch myself. I didn't actually, just the kind of stuff I normally do seems to work. Well, okay, well, maybe the next patient will be harder, be more interesting. So that's not from the patient's perspective. So I'm being honest. I'm not being, I'm being descriptive. I'm not being proscriptive. You shouldn't have that. I have a bad attitude in this particular case, but that's honestly, it's true. Like, oh, I just did what I do and everything fit together and then they got off the table. Everything's great. Okay. But it's more interesting. It's like, oh, I thought it was this and oh no, it was that, or that point. Oh, this person, they had kidney lung problem. I thought it was the kidneys, but it actually was the lungs that was the main starting point. And I had to go from that perspective instead of the way it would normally go. Well, why is that? What about that person's history did that? Can I figure that out or not figure that out? That's more interesting to me. I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
It does make sense. I also find that it takes a fair amount of energy and attention to do that. It's much easier to go, oh yeah, this, that, ding, 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 ding. Sometimes I wonder, sometimes there are just days where like, maybe I'm just not really on it today because I'm seeing a lot of a similar thing and it seems to be working and, well, maybe it's just the weather. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just not being attentive today.
Well, I think it's statistics. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you had it, but I've had days where I used to see like 16 people a day, and they all came for right shoulder pain. Okay, or they all came because they've been in a car accident. And it's not like I hadn't been studying right shoulder. I mean, what the shoulder pain wasn't anything to do with me. I didn't find that their right shoulders were the problem, which actually most of them it wasn't. But so I think if you just know if things come at random, every so often they appear unrandom.
Fair enough.
Is that not non-random? I think so. But personally, I don't. I find those as amusing anecdotes versus something that requires deep thought about why that particular. I remember that day. That was really actually. I think I made him. I didn't. I wasn't completely honest. The last person had shoulder pain on the other side, but they all had shoulder pain. All their chief complaints were shoulder pain, and I wasn't particularly. What's the word? That wasn't a particularly common symptom of common chief complaint in my practice. So anyway,
One of those days.
one of those days. Yeah,
And it's a chance to find out a whole lot about shoulder pain and the different ways.
absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like everyone, like shoulder pain, well, there's this kind of shoulder pain, that kind of shoulder pain. You can learn a lot.
Absolutely. It was, I love that day. I mean, it wasn't my favorite day. Again, that maybe you can cut this off topic is I would have days where I would see at least one patient
Oh.
from every decade of life.
Mm.
I have a baby, I have a teenager, I have someone in their 20s, a couple people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So if I had those days, all of the different infants feel super different from 95-year-olds, right?
Oh.
And so to have to readjust and interact, and I don't know, I was like, I at the end of those days, I felt like I should have been paying them. I just felt so fabulous at the end of the day.
Well, Dan, this gets to what you were talking about with paying attention and being with the person in the way that they are, following and discovering what's there. It's very enlivening.
Yeah.
At least I find it. On a good day, it's enlivening. On a day when it maybe is rougher, I feel like I'm swimming upstream. It's like either you're in the flow or not. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the flow and it's great. And there's other days where it's like, man, I just have a headwind with this. But you got to persevere.
Yeah. I think also it's helpful to realize, particularly in acupuncture, that we don't really do anything. We just give some information, or we contact the I would say usually the zheng qi, the normal qi or whatever, upright qi. And it's as we've, every time I come on, I say the same thing. Acupuncture is not sticking needles in people. Acupuncture is using needles or cupping or mox or whatever to get a response from people. And so since the treatment is the response, we don't really do very much. And so I know myself, when I had a day, if I was tired at the end of the day, it meant I had not done a very good job that day, because I was trying to make things happen. And if I had a day where I was really, like you were saying, in the flow, but just kind of realizing, I just need to do the kind of interact here and this and watch what happens, I would feel more energized at the end of the day than when I went to work.
Are you a California licensed acupuncturist who accepts insurance or wants to? Are you satisfied with your current reimbursements? You could be earning more. With the right support, joining top insurance networks such as Cigna is simple. AccuCare was started 30 years ago by acupuncturists for acupuncturists. AccuCare has already negotiated top reimbursement rates. With AccuCare, you'll spend more time with your patients and less time battling insurance paperwork. What do their members say? Here are a few words from Tara Diaz, LAC. Thanks to AccuCare, I am now successfully in network with several major insurance providers, which has significantly expanded my patient base and improved my practice's financial stability. Visit AccuCare.com and let them help you get in network with Cigna and other companies. Get paid what you deserve. Visit AccuCare.com and save $100 on your credentialing application fee. Use the code PROSPER. That code again, PROSPER. Visit AccuCare.com to get higher reimbursement rates and a credentialing company you can trust. I mean, this gets into some ways that we talk about qi, right? Just dropping into Chinese for a second. There's shun qi, like with the flow, or you got ni qi, or going against the flow. And when you're kind of in that flow, it's like the wind is at your back. I want to bring this back to palpation, because there's plenty of that in EV. And look, this is something that you've been curious about, you've investigated for a large part of your career. I find palpation to be very interesting, in part because it can give very direct experience. I had a patient the other day, I just put my hands on, and they just dropped into spleen 9, like cavernously fell in, like, oh, wow. Okay, don't ignore this. I mean, it was so obvious, right? Giant pothole. But sometimes I think it's more subtle. And I think it can be tricky, in part because, as we were discussing earlier, well, I've got an idea and I'm kind of looking to prove my idea. And you can talk yourself into things really easily. So I'd like to hear a bit from you on using palpation and how that interacts with your perception? Not necessarily your thinking, but your perception.
I will do my best. I think the most important thing in this regard, Michael, and it's one of those very simple things that when I teach, apparently is not so easy for me to get across to people, is you have to separate sensation from interpretation. You just have to sense what you have to be aware of what you feel and not try to attach any meaning to it until you're clear on what you felt.
Mm.
And for me, this goes to everything because otherwise you do what you were just talking about. So even if you take the pulse, I would, my own way, which I'm not particularly good at pulse diagnosis, so maybe I shouldn't bring this up, but you just pay attention to the pulse, what you feel, and have a really clear view or whatever, picture, sensation, memory, and afterwards try to interpret what that would mean. And there's all these different ways of doing pulse diagnosis. And if you are looking for one of them, you will miss the other ones if they happen to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can just keep in your memory what you feel and then go, well, let's see, if I do 3 positions on each side, what would that mean? If I did 12 positions, what would it mean? Is there something that's really more? It's really more that the right is very different than the left, all those different kinds of things. And for most people, I think it's easier to do that. You feel something and then try to interpret it. Maybe with the pulse, you may test it like, oh, yeah, okay, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's something that happens all the time. We have the different things that we listening or yang rhythm or shape of chi, all the different things in the EV toolbox. And it's always the same. You have to feel it, perceive it, and then interpret it later. And so if you're trying to check, I mentioned channel listening, you're going to check the channels. You're going to say, oh, is this liver channel blocked? That's going to be different than I'm just checking all the channels and see what I feel. And maybe in the beginning, the way we normally teach, and which I still basically do, is which of the channels feels different. And yeah, and then
Oh, that's a great question. Instead of looking for blocked or open, what's different?
let's say different.
That's a whole different inquiry.
And then later, that's right. And then it's okay, these are different. Then it's like, well, how are they different? Versus, oh, is this blocked? Is that blocked? Is that blocked? Because sometimes, even though we in our teaching we focus on the block, that's maybe not the most important thing for people. But it's this idea that you have to be able to be open and perceive whatever you perceive. And the other thing about it is you can't, I don't know how to say this exactly. You can't take it too seriously. So when I talk to patients, though sometimes I forget, but I try to never say, you have this.
Mm.
I say, I feel this. So instead of saying, oh, you have, again, you have kidney yang deficiency, I would say, oh, if they ask me, which sometimes they do, I say, oh, I felt that in this part of your body, there was less activity than in other parts. And not that you have it, because it's possible, it's probable, but not necessary. But I think also that,
Well, even if they have it, it's not at all helpful for them to grasp onto that.
exactly. This is maybe slightly tangential, but it's very clear that in our clinics, all of our the vast majority of our patients are in trance states. And when people are in a trance state, they hear exactly what you say, and it goes into their unconscious. They don't hear what you mean. They hear what you say. And that's why you should never say anything really like, oh my gosh, no, this is terrible. You feel like a toxic waste dump. Like there's no benefit to that.
I would say there's beyond no benefit.
Sure, it's really harmful.
It's dangerous. It's harmful. People already do that. They come in and they say, "I'm a hot mess."
Yeah, that's like yeah. So if they ask, I usually try not to tell people anything, but if they ask me, I try to make it what I feel and then to use terms that are as positive as possible. And don't say, oh, they know that, oh, I'm saying you're a hot mess, but they know I'm joking. Like, no, they don't know you're joking when they're in this state. And you gotta be careful. I've made very bad mistakes like this in the past, but sometimes I've made good choices too. So I think that that's part of the same thing, that you have to separate your sensation from interpretation. And when you're trying to feel things, and I think maybe even you get an impression of someone, you should for yourself say, oh, I get an impression that they're, I mean, I get, maybe this is a bad joke, but I'll tell it anyway, that when I used to do supervising clinics, it was very common for when the students would come and talk to me about their patients, they would say, oh, this person has a shun disturbance, a spirit disturbance. And I would tell them what that means to me is you don't like them, and I have no interest in whether you like them or not. So try and go back and just accept them, appreciate them. That's another way also when you're doing things, you're feeling the different the chi signal or whatever. We like to have the attitude that when I'm feeling these things, I'm appreciating them. And after I appreciate them, then I put it into the mix and think about what it might mean versus I'm evaluating them. Because that judgmental state gets you too close to interpreting before it mixes up the interpreting and the sensation. So we talk about people, I want to feel the yang rhythm. I want you to appreciate the yang rhythm. Okay, you appreciate it. Now, of those different places, where do you think the yang rhythm has the least amplitude? And if they do it that way versus, oh, I want you to go evaluate the yang rhythm, they come up with a different answer. Because when they're evaluating, as soon as they find something that feels off, they glom onto it, like, oh, that's it. And the rest of the time they're not paying attention. But if they appreciate it, then, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. That's interesting. Oh, well, which one's the less? Oh, well, I guess. And then you can go back and check, don't have to. But I think that's a part of the same thing. This it's the attitude, because when you're appreciating, you're more open than when you are evaluating.
It's so different.
Yeah.
It's so different. And yeah, I mean, simple in a way, the difference between appreciation and evaluation. Wow.
And again, I think what you were talking about earlier, Michael, as health practitioners, we're taught that we have to evaluate things. Yeah. And
Totally. And not just that, but all these other health practitioners who have failed them. Otherwise, why are they in the office with the weirdo with the needles? Right? So we have to get it right. It's really drilled into us.
yeah.
I think it's drilled into many of us in our schooling. We have to get it right. We can't fail our patients. And yes, so it becomes very evaluative. I mean, after all, we're practicing in evidence-based medicine, hopefully, right? Blah, blah, blah. There's that. But and not to get rid of it either. I'm not saying get rid of evaluation, but to leave room for the appreciation piece in the beginning.
That's right. Yeah. I think in the end, you always have to evaluate things before you decide what to do. But I think if you start with appreciating first, you'll have your evaluation will be more helpful to the patient.
Okay. As we're talking about this, I'm finding that I don't know if I've had much training in life that would lean on appreciation. I mean, I think about my schooling, I think about my family upbringing, life in general, maybe just my personality, more evaluative than appreciative. So, how do you develop that?
Well, I think I gotta tell a story which you could also cut out, but I think it's just this practice and just do it. If you just try to again, for me, this very simple thing, separating sensation from interpretation, uh, is a big deal. And also, I think I learned from one of my teachers. Uh, Again, I don't always live up to it. Is that when you are a teacher, In the classroom, inside the classroom, there are no bad students. There are only bad teachers. And in the treatment room, there are no bad patients. There are only bad practitioners. Once you leave the room, you can think whatever you want. You go, that person was crazy. But in the room, you have to, again, I think part of the thing of the modesty is the sense of responsibility. So again, one of the things with doing things, the way we've been talking about is if you pick a point and this is where your teacher told you to put the point, and that's why you're doing it, and it doesn't work, well, that's what happens, right? You can, how you deal with it, there's many different ways of dealing with it. But it's like, oh, I picked the point because I felt this was the point that was right, then I'm responsible for what I do. And so one of the things I want to be very clear, even myself, though I'm mostly retired, but I still see a few patients a week. It's not uncommon that I, like my teacher, Dr. Ling, put a needle in and, oh, it didn't work. It's not what it is. Or I have in my head, I'm going to do these 3 or 4 points. And when I get to the last point, it's like not there anymore. And so this is, I think, answering your question, my response now is, that's cool. Like, right? First of all, again, I'm self-centered. I am paying attention, right? And oh, actually, maybe the other stuff I did had a positive impact on the person. So it's not like, oh, my scheme of what's wrong with them is terrible. I didn't understand what, whatever Zhang Zhongjing or the Neijing was saying. It's like, oh, cool. Okay. And again, we have to maybe take a couple minutes to recalibrate and try to find out what to do next. And sometimes it's like, oh, actually, there's nothing more to do. So I think that's does that make sense? It's like you're
It not only makes sense, it takes us on the long walk around the block where we started, which is finding something that you weren't looking for. And that it's delightful and it's interesting and it lets you know that you're being attentive.
And so I think in terms of if I'm checking my evaluation of them, I would say, oh, I am poor at evaluating them because I wanted to do this in my evaluation. If that's my core thing, I didn't do a good job, right? But if I was appreciating them, I appreciated them. And then I had this idea, oh, well, maybe it could be this. And like, oh, no, no, that wasn't that. But I am not less appreciative. Maybe it's a second degree, a second order thing. Like, oh, okay, well, now I actually realize, oh, I appreciated them and things are improving. And so I need to change my evaluation as a positive, maybe, or a natural progression of what's going on in the process versus, oh, I was wrong because I evaluated them incorrectly. And also, I think sometimes I think this is true. Some people like get mad at the patients when they don't, they blame the victim, when I did all my favorite example is
I did all the right points.
I did maybe 50 years ago in Taiwan. I worked for a short time with a guy who did the Zhu Liuju, what do you call it? The phase energetics, where they take your birthday and they go through all the machinations of that and what points open, like you were talking about before. And he saw a young guy and he did all this stuff with the young guy and I think he just did 1 or 2 points. And the guy said to him, so Dr. So-and-so, like, well, if I don't feel completely better, when should I come back? And the doctor was insulted. Like, didn't I explain what I just did? I picked the perfect point at the perfect time. Like, you can't not.
I just changed your Ming.
Yeah, you can't possibly not get better. And I remember the guy looking at me and I'm like, you know, I'm just a foreigner in the corner of the room. Don't look at me. But what it was, I mean, it wasn't the performance art by the practitioner. It was what he believed. And it was like, for me, it was like, okay, Dan, Never ever do that. Never ever about anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Not, of course, not only the Zhuliuju type stuff, but anything. Like never think, oh, what do you mean you don't get better? Like, don't you know? Don't you know who I am? And don't you know what I've done? Like, it's a crazy thing. And I think if your basic stance is again appreciative and modest and which are both just synonyms for vaguely realistic. I think you'll get better in your patients. You help your patients.
This reminds me a bit of a quote, and it's either Arthur C. Clarke or one of those other great science fiction writers, who I maybe Isaac Asimov. And it goes something to the effect of the greatest discoveries are not, Eureka, I found it. The greatest discoveries always begin with, huh, that's weird.
Yeah.
And Dan, this feels very much in line with that, like, huh, I didn't expect that. What's that doing here?
Well, I don't. I mean, this is appropriate here, but it never worked in class. I used to say, "Well, what's the goal of studying EV?" And the goal of studying EV is to go from "huh" to "oh." So that's my own in my own head. That's what it is. You go from "huh" to "oh." And again, as many things I do doesn't really connect with people, but I think it's maybe along the same lines.
Let's talk about connect for just a second, because I think it fits in here. And this is something you've talked about. It's something Chip talked about and wrote about. In fact, the two of you have talked about it and written about it. And it's the idea of Tong,
Yes.
which I think it fits in here.
Yeah. So I think I mean, this is, I mean, it's really interesting. When Chip and I were getting into this, there were many different people in East Asian medicine going into the same concept. Around the same time, there's a woman in Germany wrote a book about it, a small book about this conception. Volker did a thing about which not connected to us, not based on talking to us or vice versa. There was some small books from China that came out about the same time. So there was something in the air there, which I don't want to even speculate as to why. But so Tong, most people in acupuncture know it as just being open. And the example that everyone uses is, when there's no openness, then there's pain, because the word for openness is Tong and the word for pain is Tong, so they're quite close. But I think we look through things. I think in the end, there's two aspects to this. And again, we did write an article about this that was published in the Lantern, which I believe is now available on the EV website if people want to learn more about it. But the basic thing is this word Tong originally doesn't just mean open. It means open and connected, and actually connected to the point where things become unified and homogeneous. And some of the things are still left over in modern Chinese. If you you don't get how something actually works. You can't figure it out. You get shang bu tong, right? I can't think about it till it's all connected. And so it has this meaning of everything being open and connected. And to us, particularly acupuncture, maybe moxibustion, to do this openness and connection is the really base thing that these modalities do. So whether they end up tonifying or supplementing or draining or whatever, that's a secondary effect based on the context of the body and maybe the context of some other things. But what's really going on is the first thing is the acupuncture needle or the moxa or maybe even the cupping and the scraping. It all unblocks things and gets them to connect. And that's why we do a thing in the EV, which again, described in the book, about trying to feel of the channels are Tong or not. And when they're Tong, you can feel the whole channel connect and connect to everything else. And so this idea that things being connected as the basis of health, and that acupuncture, even if acupuncture is being used to supplement or tonify, what is actually happening at the point is this opening up, connecting. I think has been really helpful to us in trying to figure out how to treat people better and to understand how to do things. I'm not sure it's correct. I mean, this is our very strong belief, but again, any strong belief could be wrong. But so one example from my own practice is in the 70s, I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours working on acupuncture techniques, making people feel warm or draining and being able to manipulate the needle in lots of different ways. And for me, again, could be that I just didn't learn it very well, but for me, after a while, I had the realization that when I did it, it was like a parlor trick. I could make people's limbs feel hot or cold, or I could move things. They could feel it here or there. But this had basically no connection to their health improving. And so, as is my wont, and over the last 30 years, I do almost no needle manipulation of any kind. I just try to find where the point is precisely, and then let the needle do its thing. And if the needle's in the right place, it will unblock, it will tone everything, and we'll see what happens. But I don't know what last time I did X technique to tonify or drain. Again, I'm not saying that they don't work. They might work very well, but for me, they didn't have a lasting, I wanted like one thing I think I learned it from osteopathy, maybe more than other places, is when someone comes back from a treatment, the second after a treatment, whether it's a few days or a few weeks later, what you cannot accept is major markers feeling the same as they were the last time. So if they had a certain pulse, it's okay if the pulse is different, it's still not normal, not healthy. But if it's the same pulse, then what are you doing? Okay. And I think I must have learned that from osteopathy, but it made perfect sense to me. So again, in terms of these needle manipulations, you do all this stuff that people would tell you, again, it has a marketing value because the patients at the time, oh, look at that. I went to see Dan and he sent this bolt of ice down my outside of my left foot. That was amazing. But they don't, so that helps you get them to come back. But if they end up feeling the same the next time, it's like, well, what was the point of that? Why would I do that? Again, that's my own, maybe for this kind of thing, a little too personal, but that was my response. So now I've actually find the point. And again, we spend a lot of time on, again, points where you're trying to get a systemic response from the body. These point finding technologies and point location technologies that we use are not really relevant if you're doing things like trigger points or Osher points, where your goal is to get a response from the local muscle or the local tendons, which is important. I mean, I don't want to, not, they're very, very important, and people should do that. But the techniques that I just been talking about are irrelevant for that that type of needling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. You're working at a different, I don't know, order of magnitude in a way, focusing on something. And I suspect your osteopathy background, I mean, you've done all that subtle touch stuff, right? Like old school osteopathy. These guys they weren't using velocity maneuvers. It was very gentle, and it was in the gentleness, in part, I suspect, is what allowed the tonguing to happen. It's like I know in my experience, and this is just me, if I'm kind of pushed or cajoled in some way, I mean, I might conform, but there's a big part of me that's like I'm resistant. Like only part of me is coming along. But if I'm invited, oh, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I mean, I want to say I have a tangential thing in a second, but I think the more important thing is when we do diagnosis, we always want to feel what's there. And we don't want, it's not so useful to feel what's there in response to us.
Mm. Okay, that's a little bit tricky.
So we, that's tricky, but that's why you need, that is where the training and practice comes in. So if you want to feel the chi signal coming off of someone, you have to make sure that you are not emitting, that you're not tight, that you're not feeling their body's response to your hand. And that's tricky. And that's why you need to go to classes to learn how to do it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is tricky. Well, and again,
But the other thing about the gentle touch, I want to make sure we're clear about, like, I study with lots of DOs who would crack people's backs. Okay.
mm,
I studied, and I actually do it. I still do. I like to do. I mean, I don't like to do it, but it's very useful. But even there, I remember when I was studying with this one guy, and we wanted to like do a lumbar roll or something. And if you did it in such a way that was this huge crack, the guy would come over and slap you, not on the face, but on the back, saying, "Oh, you like extra force in the body? You like having extra force put in your body? I can do that."
mm,
Because his idea was if you did it right, you would be able to get the joint mobilized almost always with just a slight thud, not a big crack. And that when you got the big cracks, which patients like, okay, but you're putting too much force in, and actually, from our perspective, probably not getting again as long lasting a correction or positive influence. And so I got hit a lot by him. Actually, I mean, again, he was. I want to be totally, above. Okay, it wasn't hitting me in a way that was painful to me.
he was making a point.
It was like hitting me, like making a point, like, no, that was too much. Your positioning was not precise enough, and you made up for not being precise positioning by adding force, and therefore the force you went was not focused. And you can tell later that, oh, it moves better, but not as well as it would have moved if you had done it correctly. So it's not necessarily about subtle things in terms of what you see, but this appreciation that precision is going to get you a better result than imprecision, which you say it like that seems like, oh, that's not a big stretch for people. But yeah.
Well, there's that, and there's also the piece. I think almost every day I mention this to patients in my clinic because they come in, it's like, oh, I got this and that, like load me up with needles, doc, and I tell them about the great classic of enoughness. Like, when's the last time you read Goldilocks and the Three Bears? And people are often surprised, but I come back to it again and again. That principle of just enough for the particular person.
Well, again,
in the particular context.
I'm sure I'm dating myself again, but I consider this the George Carlin approach to Chinese medicine diagnosis.
Okay.
So one of the things I believe, you'll see if I'm right or not. One of the things I believe very clearly is that in America, and I don't want to say other places, there is over the diagnosis of deficiency as the main cause is vastly overdone. So the default diagnosis for anyone is they're deficient. And there's reasons for this in the classics, but I think if you look at the people, that's actually not their problem. And the reason is that I'm not the person who put these two things together, but someone, I can't remember who told me this. It is like George Carlin, because George Carlin said in America, if you have a problem, the only reason you have a problem is you don't have enough stuff. So we always need more stuff. And so with that as our mentality, if someone physically has a problem, it's because they don't have enough. And so we need to tonify them or supplement them. Again, you can look in the different classics, but I think in America, the reason that so many people do East Asian medicine misdiagnose people as being primarily deficient is because of this mentality. So I think your idea, the classic of enoughness, is probably a hard sell to your patients.
It might be, but I'm pitching it anyway because I think it's helpful. And in part because maybe it's helpful for them, but another piece, and it's maybe selfish or just because I'm slow, it's to remind me
Yeah.
just enough, not too much.
Well, again, one of the things that we teach that, again, we have this all the time, super obvious to us, somewhat mysterious to other acupuncturists, is if you overtreat people, you're doing harm to them. Usually not great harm, but unnecessary harm. And so lots of times when people get done with acupuncture, they feel wasted, they're sore, they're super tired, they have to go home, right? Well, that's probably not, I mean, like, that's not right. They should feel invigorated. Or maybe they feel calmer, but they shouldn't feel tired. And that's because lots of times people are overtreated. And overtreatment means you give the body more information than it can deal with. Again, if you look at it as a conversation, it's like, you have a person, you have a friend who is in trouble and you talk to them. After a certain point, you have to just shut up. They've gotten the connection with you and they've gotten out what they need to get, and you're in a certain place. And if you just keep talking to them, oh yeah, this is hard. You're really in a bad place. That's really hard. Though they get they get irritated with you. And I think lots of people do acupuncture in a way that's unnecessarily overtreating people. And again, it's one of those things we talked about before, Michael. It can be at the point where if the patients don't feel trashed afterwards, they thought they didn't get their money's worth, right? Because that's what acupuncture is. Just like in China, if they don't feel a lot of pain from the needles, they get upset. Like, what's going on here? What kind of acupuncture are you? So that's
Yeah. What kind of acupuncturist are you? Where's my damn Dochi?
yeah. So that's the cultural aspect. It's I think in it has its own importance, but it's not an aspect of importance that I am much help for people with. But I recognize it. And sometimes you can educate them and sometimes you can't. So they do what they want. But I think this overtreatment is a really unnecessary thing. Again, you don't need to know any EV tools. If you check people's pulses before and after, once you overtreat them, the pulse becomes very difficult to describe. I think Wang Zhui used to call it cha channel confusion or something. But so before it was very wiry, and then you treat them, and then it's not as smoother and less wiry. And then you put another few needles in them, you take the pulse again. You can't really describe it because the flow is like non-laminar now. And that's, or if you have someone with a tongue that was swollen and you treat them, the tongue will become less swollen. And then if you keep treating them, it'll become more swollen again, maybe even more swollen than it was in the beginning. So there are all these signs that you are attacking the chi in a way that's no longer helpful. You're interacting with it in a way that's no longer helpful, and it's just getting tired. So I think I would have people just pay attention to that because it's a very common source of discomfort. Maybe not so much real a problem, but discomfort for the patients that's pretty unnecessary.
Well, I would agree with that. And I know for myself over the years, at times I wasn't getting the results I was looking for on the table. So I'm thinking, oh, a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that, or I'll add this other thing. I don't think it ever helped.
Yeah, no,
And I think I've made people worse because I thought more might help them. Oh, I missed something. And so I'm going to give them what I think they're missing. But at a certain point, lights out. Like it's just, you can't do it. Like you were saying, you're talking with someone. It's like, all right, now you're bugging me.
That's right.
You were helpful for a minute. Please stop talking.
And I think the hardest thing is sometimes what you did just didn't work.
Sometimes it doesn't work. So here's a question, Dan.
And then doing more is gonna make it worse.
So what do you do when you've been working and it hasn't really worked, but like, okay, you've hit the end of the timer on the shot clock. What do you do?
So I think, well, for me, I am again going to be descriptive and not proscriptive. Like I'm just telling you what I do. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. Is I just tell the patient that, like today the treatment didn't quite connect the way that we normally do, but we have to stop because anything else will make it worse. And if that is the first treatment you've done on someone, that will also probably be the last treatment you do on that person. But if it's like the fifth or sixth treatment that you've done for something, then I think for me, most of the time, people will appreciate you being honest with them. And then that way they're honest with you. But so to me, it didn't feel like we did what we normally accomplish, but I can't do anything more. So come back in a couple weeks or whatever, and let's see what happened. Maybe it will still be helpful. I mean, I'm not telling you it's a good idea, but that's basically all I know how to do. So
Yeah, no, sometimes we go wide of the mark. And yeah, what we do in those moments, it's important how we work that out with ourselves and our patients.
yeah. And maybe this is slightly related, and I'm not sure I'm right, but if you approach the patients with a sense of appreciation and you touch people with a sense of appreciation, almost everybody likes that. And they know that you're paying attention to them. And again, one of the problems with doing palpation is if you're not paying attention to them and you touch them, they know that too, right? You can't sometimes when you're interviewing someone, they're not looking at you. They're staring off while they talk to you. They may or may not pick up that you're not really paying much attention. But if your hands are on them and you're thinking about lunch or whatever, you can't hide. So for me, that's a positive because it is another impetus or another thing to keep the practitioners paying attention. Because if you don't pay attention, your patients will pick it up right away.
Yes.
And I know that we tried to teach some people who are fairly, particularly they can't do this because they don't like to touch people, which is an odd thing for acupuncture. So those people have to find another way of interacting that's helpful. And I'm sure there's different ways of doing that, but
Yeah, we got all kinds of methods.
But I think,
as we were saying,
I like the fact that this appreciation or lack thereof is communicated very directly to the patient when you have your hands on them.
You can't not communicate when you have your hands on people.
That's right. Even may not be communicating what you want to communicate.
Okay. And appreciation. That's just a big whopping takeaway for me here. Appreciate that. No pun intended. Dan, where do people get this book?
You can go to the Engaging Vitality website. There's a tab there for the book. The book's available on Amazon. You can order it from your local bookstore. So there's lots of different ways. That's also the EPUB version of the book, which is a PDF that requires a special PDF reader called Javelin, which is free, is sold by Eastland Press. So you can get it that way. And for a limited time. I think until the middle of the month, the EPUB is $20. It will then be $30. And the print book is now $40, and it will be at the end of the month, it'll be $50. But you can go on, you go to your local bookstore and order it. You can go on Amazon.
Local bookstores, those exist?
Oh yeah, we have one just down the street here. So, but anyway, so that's how you would get it, and also you can get it from our own website.
Okay. Well, it's always a delight to sit down and chew the fat a bit about this weird medicine we have.
I always appreciate it's weirder than we imagine.
It is.
I always appreciate the opportunity to share things. So it's kind of you to ask me back.
All right. Well, take good care, and until next time.
Okay, take care, Michael.
Well, that wraps it up for this conversation with Dan. One of the things I quite enjoyed and I think about a lot now is that line from the Lion Tracker about, I don't know where I'm going, but I know how to get there. On the surface, it's funny. It sounds like the punchline from a Woody Allen movie, but as I sit with this, I find it indeed is a good description of clinical work. We don't know where the needles are going to go, but trust that we know how to figure it out. I always appreciate how a conversation with Dan will leave me more inquisitive and excited about acupuncture, that there is a fundamental element of playful inquisitiveness that is rooted in concern for being helpful to others, that we need skills and technique, but without an open mind that is capable of, as Dan says, finding what you weren't looking for, then we'll miss out on information that might teach us something new. One of the things about engaging vitality that I think is worth pointing out is that it's not a method of how to, but more a set of tools that allows you to find out how it is for our patients. It's a way of using your attention, sensing, and touch to see how a treatment is being received by your patients. That regardless of the acupuncture technique or tradition that you follow, the EV skills will help you to calibrate and understand how your patient is responding. This kind of cultivation of attention, it's radical in a way, as it allows for you to deeply engage in ways that will surprise you and perhaps shake up your mental models of the world. One thing that I've been doing more in my work since this conversation is to take a few moments before trying to figure out what's wrong and how to be helpful, and instead pause, connect, and appreciate my patient without any agenda in mind. And if I'm confused about a pulse, instead of trying to work out what it is, instead drop into an appreciative curiosity of the rhythm, the shape, its depth. You know, it's nice to pause the thinking for a moment, to take a small break from attempting to make sense and instead simply to sense. Try it.